Hello, and it's so nice to be able to share with you a little review. It was really a privilege and a blessing for me to be able to spend some time with you, getting to know you, and sharing with you this wonderful course on broadcast announcing. So, in order to reinforce what we reviewed and what we studied, we're going to have a minimum of 5 videos that are 45 minutes in length, and we're going to go over the concepts we studied, and I'm going to give you some ideas in the event that you wish to further delve into this wonderful area. Okay, so introduction to professional announcing. You have new announcing opportunities that are being added all the time with mass media advancements. Because the day and age we live in has technology advancing at such a rate, it is overwhelming at times to see how, with the advent of AI and everything that's happening with technology, as far as the cars that are being produced, particularly in China, by the way, and just the clarity of a television, you feel like you're there and looking at the person live. This is affecting every area of life. So there are more advancements at the same time. Some of the positions that we knew from before have become obsolete because AI is able to do as well or better as a human. So are we at some point going to be lose our jobs because of AI? And the answer is yes, and that is happening already. So we could be replaced by one of those little robots that bring us our purchases to our dorms, or service our food, or take our things to our rooms in a hotel. Okay, so mass media performers provide information. So this could be news, this could be weather, this could be entertainment, it could be companionship. It's very soothing if you get hooked on a particular show that you like to get either what's happening in the world, information on what's happening in the world, or pundits that are letting you know how they feel about a particular event that's taking place. It can provide solace and companionship for those that either don't get out too much, or you just want to kind of check out a little while when you get home from work or school. So media is also an ever-changing business, as is almost every business right now, actually, with some types of announcing falling out of favor. So falling out of favor is an American cliche, and it means that it's not as popular as something was at one point. Technological changes have brought new techniques and procedure, which is just to go back to what we were speaking about previously, and you'll learn what it takes to become a professional announcer. And what is expected when you do get to be what they call talent, and what job possibilities exist in this field. So, when you're an announcer, is it talent? Is it personality? Is it both? So let's see what the dictionary says. An announcer is a person who announces. An important strategy to consistently have a solid professional voice is to be cautious of habits with one's own personal voice. Okay, so let's break this up a little bit. When you are an announcer, you can't be all over the place. And it takes a lot of training, and it takes a mindset that can be honed in and maneuvered, and one that you can just divorce yourself, so to speak, from what's happening in your personal life, what's happening in the world, whether you feel well or you don't feel well. You have to have this constant, consistent, credible, winsome, engaging voice. A conversational tone is the most sought after tone of voice in broadcast announcing, so you want to sound like you're speaking to your audience. Due to the lack of direct feedback, And when reading a script written by someone else, this tone is difficult to use. Right now, I know my audience, I know the tone I used in class. You don't want to sound like you're lording information over your audience. You don't want to sound like you're trying to sell them on something. You're trying to sound like you're having a conversation with these people, your audience. So, media performers currently must be able to interpret and deliver the writer's message when reading off a script. I'm reading off a script right now. People that are working in media have to do the same thing. However, this is something that I read the book, I put together the slides, I'm familiar with the information. Not so when you're announcing. You're getting a script that you may have just received a few minutes before, and you kind of have to own it as you go along with your broadcasting. Okay, so let's take a brief look at a historical perspective. How has this area of work developed through the years? So, the announcer is a product of the electronic era, specifically that time in its development when voices could be transmitted through the airwaves. So you know that at one point in time, we didn't have the technology that was available to have television, and there was a time when even radio was invented and became available. So we're going to look at what it sounded like then, what it continued to sound like, and what it sounds like now. So early radio announcers bore little resemblance to modern on-air talent. And again, just as by way of reminder, a talent is a person that is the one doing the broadcasting, regardless of the venue that they're using. So, an early radio announcer, if you were to listen to one, you would be shocked, because it would bear, like it said here, little resemblance to what we listen to now. What we listen to now, depending on what station you tune into, if it's a station that that they're gearing it to an audience of young people, they're going to sound very different from a station that caters to an older generation and is transmitted later on at night. Maybe seniors might want to listen to a soothing show that might have soft jazz, or whatever it is that they're interested in. So depending on the audience, that's the talent that you look for, that's going to cater to that audience and attract that audience. The speaking style heard on the radio was unlike the normal speech of most people today. And both male and female announcers are common now, not in the past, and a wide range of vocal styles can be heard on the radio. So, what did these people sound like? Okay, so to give you an idea, the radio broadcast that I was familiar with as I was a child sounded very didactic. They sounded very professional. They sounded not like you were having a conversation with your audience, but rather bringing some news. And there was a lot of theatrics involved in that. Whereas now, they'll have the visuals taking care of that aspect. They'll have a breaking news and give you all kinds of beautiful imagery, and then in as normal a tone as possible, maybe with a little excitement and edge, they will tell you what the breaking news is. So let's look at this from an employment perspective. Let's say you wanted to, at some future time when you graduate, become an announcer of some sort. And mind you, when we were in class, you will recall that I told you that at any time, you need the skill set that an announcer in today's day and age brings to the table. So it's not a big business, and it becomes even smaller when we consider only the performing area of the industry. So it's projected that in radio and TV, announcers are to decline 12% between 2016 and 2026, and we're in 2024 right now. So the book that was used in the preparation of these slides and used as a reference, you can tell that it's not the most current. However, there have not been many books published that are appropriate for a college level course that came after this. So as stations consolidate and centralize, employment for announcers will be greatly affected. So we hear of mergers with big companies, and this is something that happens across the board in any and all industries. So the compensation for a broadcast announcer varies dramatically, but in general, it's low. You're not going to get rich by being an announcer unless you're one of the top talents in prime time news or radio, and you have a very huge following. Then these talents do make quite a bit of money. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about specialization. Most announcers' work falls within 4 broad areas: music announcing, news, sports, or some type of specialty. Music refers to the radio disc jockey or a DJ, but occasionally includes the announcers for internet music sites, so net jockeys, satellite radio, Sirius XM radio, and voice tracking, which is cyber jockeys. These jobs require the announcer to provide the scripted or ad-lib material between music selections heard during the program. Now, what is something that's scripted or ad-lib? So scripted means that beforehand, these talents arranged for what they were going to say. They either had notes or they had a definite script that they used. Ad-lib means that they went with the flow. As the moment grabbed them, they thought, oh, let me talk about this, and then that's what they did. Announcer specialization. News announcing includes anchors and reporters. While news has traditionally been delivered on radio, television, and cable system, the internet and other content delivery systems have opened the door to additional news announcing possibilities. So, specialty announcers are those who work in other announcing positions such as commercial voiceover announcers, weather forecasters, narrators, talk show hosts, or television staff announcers who voice train breaks and other program information. So these are all different things to consider, different areas. Is a college degree necessary for a broadcast announcer? Not always, but let's say you want to grow within the field, it's always a good idea to have a college degree. So in most competitive situations, you will have an edge over a person who may have come into this arena and then was promoted because they saw talent. So you can always check the website for the Broadcast Education Association, and you can find schools that offer a communication program. So obviously this is geared to a Western website, but you can have the same thing that you can look into in China. So let's look at this a little bit further. Is a college degree necessary for a broadcast announcer? So in general, if you want to specialize, you are going to have to get a specialty degree. So news directors emphasize that developing writing skills cannot be stressed enough. So you need to be articulate, you need to have writing skills that have been developed. Some would actually recommend a major in broadcasting. Others would say you could have a major in another area that would kind of ooze you into broadcasting, but something obviously that's related. In addition to a broadcast background, you will need a broad, generalized educational background. Any college degree program will require you to take some type of core curriculum coursework. Okay, so the group that was in our class, like the group that I taught this course to, had a broad spectrum of what they were going to study. In the art history courses that I taught, these were students that were pursuing a degree in art, be it art history, be it that they wanted to be a curator in a museum, be it that they wanted to be artists. So this is something that, depending on the field that you're pursuing, you need to look into what you're going to study, but nevertheless, every college is going to require some basic core coursework. Okay. In addition to a broadcast background, you will need a broad generalized educational background, and any college degree program practically will require, again, this type of core curriculum coursework. Okay, so the final element is specialized courses that match the announcer's specialization that you like to pursue. For example, let's see if you want to be an announcer for classical music. A strong foreign language background would be helpful, if not required, and you should pursue some very specific coursework that will help you attain the position you'd like. At one time, especially on radio, you would have had to obtain a license in addition to your educational background, but the license was not always required to perform in any manner. So it depends. Let's talk about the physical requirements for announcers. So the first point is that now a large range of voices is accepted, and that you have to have a pleasing voice as well as free from any regional accents. That is not the case in the United States today. Today, there are stations that I listen to on the television that they will have a panel of different pundits putting forth their ideas on a particular topic. And one of the people that they regularly have in, one of the journalists that they regularly have coming in, she has this new affect that is very prevalent on the west coast of our country that I particularly don't care for. Now, you have to account for the personal preferences of people, and the less nuanced you are, the more you conform to what the general public finds unobtrusive. That should be your what you gear for. And so unless you're speaking to an audience where you know all your audience is either liberal minded, or all your audience is more conservative minded, or they don't mind a tone that you know is reserved for people that have different ideologies, you have to be neutral if you want to have a following. So you have to have outstanding word pronunciation, and your grammar has to be right on point. So another requirement at the time that the book was written was that you had to be attractive. Attractive is a very personal thing. It has to do with what you find attractive, and what you find attractive, the next person may not find attractive. It's not always a given that someone is found attractive by everyone. That has to do with your culture, your age, what was acceptable during the time that you were growing up, where those things might have been more important than when you're older. Now there are stations that want to show that they follow the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they will purposely put in someone that is excessively overweight or underweight, or has some type of deformity, just to say, look at how diversified we are. Okay. Now, grooming is another thing. If you watch an American station, let's say, and then you watch BBC, which is located in the UK, you're going to see that the announcers in the United States, depending on the station, but by and large, they have heavy makeup, they have facelifts all the time, by and large, the majority, they have groomers that invest a lot of time before the announcers, the talents go on air, and they are constantly having fillers, Botox, so that on camera they look younger, but at the same time you know that it is unnatural, and you know that it is a result of them having had a lot and ongoing cosmetic procedures being done. Okay, another physical requirement is stamina. This will never change. Stamina means that you're able to begin something and you have the energy and the discipline to continue going when you may not feel like it at times. So sometimes they're on air for 24 hours. Talent is often required to work long hours and frequently be available at odd times. With the advent of technology now, what has happened is that, let's say you work for a particular news station in the United States. You may be on in the morning, you might have your own talk show. Then later on in the afternoon, you might be involved in a panel discussion. And then maybe later on during a newscast, they call you back in as a resource to fill in or act as a commentator on some world news event. That requires really great physical health and a lot of stamina. So some broadcasters need to be in good physical condition to maintain the pace of the business and look or sound energetic on air, whether it's first thing in the morning or later on in the evening. Okay, a final physical requirement is having the physical strength to carry broadcast equipment. Generally, if you're the talent, you won't have to do this, but if you're abroad and you're in a war-torn area, let's say, you may have to do that. So, and equipment has gotten smaller, lighter, more portable, and that is even more the case now. But you may still be expected to carry some of this equipment from time to time. So your opportunities are not as great as they were because of station consolidation and automation. Meaning that with all the advances, you have the quality of life that goes along with advancements, but you have the lack of privacy and the lack of quality of life because you're always on, right? So you could find that your best radio opportunity is in a two-part job where you do sales and voice tracking, pre-recording for later shows, and we see a lot of that in the US today. Okay, so emotional requirements. You're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You could be announcing, or maybe you could pre-record during Christmas, but if there's something happening, you have to have a group of people that are willing to work weekends, that are willing to work evenings, that are willing to work at any time of the day or night, and that's part of the job requirement, and you don't always get to pick unless you're a tremendous talent. The ability to handle stress, especially the stress that comes working under time deadlines. You don't have the luxury of, if you have a stomach ache or if your throat is sore, or if you're having a bad day, if one day you wake up and you feel dizzy or you have vertigo, you still have to go on. You have to have a perfectionist attitude. You can't settle for good enough because your audience will leave you in a flash. We're human, and every once in a while someone will have an occasional slip up. But in the US, it is so refined that it is incredibly rare. When you hear someone slipping up, you're immediately aware of it. If you're heading into the performing arena, you need to foster a perfectionist attitude from the very beginning. So from the very beginning, you have to say, I have to do this in a way that I am going to be absolutely perfect in my delivery. Okay. Is practical experience necessary? Let's take a look. So the industry looks for entry-level performers who have some experience, and that's always the case. you can, if you're in the industry, you will be able to spot someone that you can tell from the get-go, this person has a lot of native talent and they're gonna be really good with a little polishing. Okay, so in addition to that, we've already discussed the physical and emotional requirements. So having had some practical hands-on experience will always be helpful. An on-air position as a campus radio or television cable station is one possibility, but actual internships at a station are far more valuable. College programs offer course credit for internships at commercial broadcast facility, and you may not be on the air while you're interning, but you're gonna gain a lot of experience. Now, in this day and age in the United States, internships are the biggest thing. At the high school where I last taught, they had a very renowned broadcasting program that they had on site, and a lot of these students have gone on to pursue a degree in broadcasting and work in the field. So it's actually a really great thing if you go to if you this is what you want to do, that you are involved in a school where this is promoted. Also, internships are very, very big in not just broadcasting, but across the board in any profession in the US. Another commercial broadcast station may offer unpaid internships to students. That is no longer possible in our country. These jobs are often gopher positions, meaning you are helping out with anything that is necessary. You might be getting lunch, you might be getting coffee, you might be editing papers, making photocopies, etc. It'll be important that you have some practical experience to go along with on your resume with the rest of your educational background. So gaining some hands-on training, you'll establish some valuable contacts as well. So what are your responsibilities? As a media performer, you're entertaining, you're informing, and you're persuading your audience. And in order to communicate effectively, you have to understand the meaning of the message and to connect that idea with what interests the audience. You might love a certain topic, but if your audience is not interested, they really don't care that you're so in love with that particular topic. It has to grasp your audience. Most media outlets have a good analysis of their audience, and it is the responsibility of the announcer to understand what's it going to take to reach this audience. An announcer should also feel a sense of social responsibility. Performers have a certain obligation to use their position to do good for society. Now, it used to be that in television, particularly in journalism, the journalists were, excuse me a sec. Sorry, excuse me. That they were supposed to give you neutral news. That's not the case anymore. And so you have various radio stations. So if you're conservative or if you're liberal, you're going to tune into the station that's going to present the news with a bias and just inherent in it according to what your political preferences are. So the audience tends to put broadcast performers on a pedestal, giving announcers a certain degree of influence over their audience. And this is true even now. Okay, on a more technical level, an announcer has a responsibility to be able to properly operate their equipment, and that stands to reason. So in television, news reporters in smaller markets will shoot some video and edit some stories. That's not really the case too often anymore, although if it is in a more rural part of our country, that might be the case. So news anchors, television news anchors, may not need to operate any equipment as part of their job responsibilities, though they probably will have other duties. Emergency notification responsibility on the national level. Most broadcast stations are part of the emergency alert system. So what that means is every once in a while in our country, we will have a noise that goes beep, and it'll last for a long time, maybe close to a minute. And then at the end of that beep, it'll say, this is a trial on behalf of the emergency alert system in the United States. This is only a trial. This is not an emergency. This is just to acquaint you with the information that were we to have an emergency, whether it's a weather emergency or it's a threat to the country from another country, they would have this drill. In the event of a national emergency, we would know that you would go to a broadcasting station to find out what kind of emergency you're in. Okay, so let's talk about role models. People like to have role models. As a student, you might have another student that's a role model. You might have your parents as role models, your grandparents, perhaps a teacher. And so the goal should never be to copy an announcer. You can learn from other people that have been successful. What do they look like? What do they sound like? What is their body language? So you can adapt some strong basic techniques to your announcing, and that can help you develop the unique performance style that you want, that you're searching for. You need to be yourself. At the same time, you need to hone yourself in any area that will hinder your communication with your particular audience. So, no one's born with extraordinary broadcast talent, but you can all learn general skill sets. And then you can add your own unique personality and your hard work so that you can obtain a place of respect and admiration if this is the field that you're wanting to go to. Okay, so conclusion. This is a true profession that requires some skill, necessitates an understanding of techniques and procedures, carries responsibility, can be one of the most rewarding financially and artistically of media performance. And there's a small job market, but let's say you're really, really talented, you can get into that niche. The most highly competitive part of the broadcasting field would be to be on television, of course. To be successful, it's going to take talent, hard work, and a degree of luck. We're going to begin chapter 2 now, audio performance environment. So the environment is everything that encompasses wherever that talent is located, whether it's radio station or a TV station, or if you're out in the field. So you're going to work as a media performer in many different environments. So you're going to be working in the studio, in the field, etc. In contrast, if you're a radio or internet announcer, you'll be required to operate all the equipment as an audio studio while he or she is announcing. That's not always the case, but it was at the time when this book was published. In any case, every media performer will benefit if they have a basic knowledge of the environment. So don't worry if at first it might seem overwhelming that there are so many words that you have to learn, so much technology. Just any job that you pursue, you're going to get in and you're going to see how there's a lot to learn, and with time you will. Okay, you should note that in addition to working with the traditional broadcast equipment, a modern performer needs to know how to manipulate computer-based equipment. Now, it goes without saying that in the last 10 years or so, the advancements are so huge that no matter what degree you're pursuing or what job force you're going to be in, you're going to have to be pretty much an expert with a computer. So let's look at an audio studio. It's the most formal setting for an audio performer. Regardless of the setting, the basic equipment, whether you're announcing in a radio or a disc jockey, it's going to be similar. The audio output from this booth is sent to another studio, and such as the production studio. Sometimes there's an audio recorder in the announcer booth to record the performance. Now, some audio performance, such as a podcast or an internet DJ, may find they're working in a much less formal setting than a professional radio studio. So, no doubt you're both performer and equipment operator in your home studio. So, we have to learn the ins and the outs of the equipment so that we can make the best possible recordings. Now, if I were to ask you, what about the new advent of YouTube and how people have YouTube channels? That's something else that you can be aware of, that a lot of people are investing in having really top-notch equipment so that they can produce their own YouTube videos. For instance, I have a student that is very much into Legos. Well, a student that I taught a few years ago, and we're still in touch. And he loves Legos and has created Legos of the most iconic buildings and cities in the world, and they are remarkable. And so his YouTube channel features him explaining all of his different Legos, and it's fabulous. And he dedicates a lot of time, energy, and his finances to have a really great production, and he does. So let's look at the microphone now. One of the key pieces of equipment, obviously, and we need to understand the basics that will prove helpful for media content. Because if you choose the wrong microphone for any given situation, you can mar, is the word that is used here. Mar is to ruin or diminish or somehow compromise the quality of the performance, regardless of how good you are at working the equipment. So everything works together. You can't eliminate one thing or the other as not important. The whole conglomerate is important. So dynamic microphones are extremely popular in electronic media circumstances because they are rugged. A pickup pattern is the area or shape around the microphone in which it best picks up sound. Microphones are usually mounted to position them properly in relation to the announcer. And note that in each instance, a good microphone technique situates the announcer at the proper mic to mouth distance and position as explained in the next section. So sometimes you're at a function and you're listening to someone who's not used to using a microphone, or even when people are used to using it and use it as part of their career. For instance, I attend a church where a microphone is used, and sometimes the audio equipment is not working properly, or the mic is not working properly, and it makes a horrible screech, or there's a reverb, and it's very irritating and very discombobulating to the speaker, obviously. So, working with a microphone, let's look at the particulars now. There are two main concepts to remember: the mic to mouth distance and the position. So both are equally important. So what's a good distance? About 6 inches. That would put you to about here. Depending on your vocal strength, you could move a little closer, a little further, but that's a good starting point, so that you're not here or you're not here. So you need to see what's going to work best for you. If you're too close, it's possible you may distort the audio, and your voice may be too loud for the mic to handle. Be aware that people often count with a vocal tone and volume that is completely different from when they're just speaking. When possible, use a more realistic approximation of the actual performance when setting the levels. Okay, and then this is getting into very technical things that if you decide to pursue this, or if you are a person that's going to be using a microphone, then you get into some of the more specific areas. Okay, so what is mic fright and why media content performers get it? It's not just mic fright. Some people are afraid of speaking to others. Some people are very introverted. Some people are afraid of speaking into a mic, speaking in front of a large audience, knowing that they're going to be recorded and that somebody's going to be listening to that. So, on the one hand, mic fright is nothing more than a mild case of anxiety that you can get when you know, wow, I'm going to be listened to in front of an audience. What if I mess up? On the other hand, the nervousness can be so severe that the media content can't even communicate with the audience. That's very scary. The television version of this affliction is called camera panic. And you'll see that many of the symptoms, causes, and cures of both are the same. So let's look at it. Being prepared is the last major cause of mic fright. So if you feel, hey, I'm not that prepared, you're going to be a nervous wreck. You've probably experienced trying to wing it. We all do. Before an exam, and maybe you did okay, or you winged it, you didn't really rehearse an important conversation you had to have with somebody, but the results are almost always less than desirable. If you prepare, chances are it's going to be a lot better than if you don't prepare. So, how can you ease this? You prepare properly. Relax. There are a lot of relaxing procedures, like you sit straight, you breathe deeply, and you engage your entire lung. You envision how your performance is going to go seamlessly, okay? Believe in what you're saying. If you're working for a station, what you're going to be reading from, if it's a prepared text, it's always going to be in line with where you are philosophically, or they wouldn't have hired you. So you need to have confidence in yourself. If you know you're good, if you know that you're prepared, if you know that you've been in this field, there's no need to be unnecessarily frightened or panicked, even though a little butterflies are probably unavoidable. And then practice, 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 practice. Okay, so let's look now at a console or the audio mixer. The key piece of equipment in any studio is the audio console. Why? Because it signals from all the other equipment, such as the microphone, and it goes through the console. So it's also known as the board or the mixer. Any audio console or mixer has three major functions: selecting, monitoring, and routing audio signal. So what does it do? It allows an operator to select whatever piece of equipment he or she needs by manipulating the correct buttons, switches, or slide controls for the channel assigned to that piece of equipment. In another way, audio consoles can facilitate signal processing through a send and return wiring arrangement. For example, reverb can be added to an announcer's voice by sending the voice audio to an outboard signal processor. Okay, so music playback sources. Today, the music employed in radio stations is most often played back from a computer-based playback system, replacing older sources such as turntables, which have made a comeback because there's the element of nostalgia, and so some people are using that. CDs, digital audio tapes, and mini disc players. So some stations continue to utilize these older devices for music playback, especially those that rely on recordings that were made in the analog format days prior to digital age, such as oldies music stations, and there are many. Okay, in making the transition from analog to digital, most stations now play back their music and other programming elements from a digital audio storage system. And most systems can operate in a totally automated fashion or in an operator assist mode. Digital audio equipment. So, once again, the older analog-based audio equipment, such as a turntable, the cassettes, tape cartridges, reel-to-reel, they've been replaced by digital. The cassette that was once a standard was readily found in the past in most newsrooms. So the majority of desktop audio editing is done on editing software used with standard computer systems. So it's important to remember that in radio, a performer is also an equipment operator much of the time, and a good operational knowledge of the studio equipment is expected as part of the job. Okay, so podcasting or on-demand audio. So radio worked on the basis of appointment listening. You needed to tune in to the broadcast at that time. Today, with internet, this allows you to have your computer and a microphone, and you can produce and post an audio production for listening whenever it's convenient. So you can listen to lots of existing podcasts, learn from them, develop your own style, and then once you're like ready, you say, okay, I want to go forward. You name the podcast. It should be relevant to the topic, include a searchable term so that it can be located by interested readers and listeners. Produce a couple of episodes. Contact one of the podcast hosting sites such as Lisbon, Podbean, Buzzsprout, and there may be others now as well. And then for a fee, they will help you with not just distribution, but they'll promote you so that word gets out about the existence and content of your podcast. Podcast can be an exciting opportunity to utilize audio skills and connect with a worldwide audience. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the next time that we meet.